Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Fiat Bravo car. Opinions about cars, especially brands, are worth taking into account when we know the people presenting them. A good example are Italian cars manufactured after 2000. Often, negative opinions about them are expressed by those who have not owned them or have been burned by older models. On the other hand, Italian cars are praised excessively by their users, in a way standing in opposition to German and Japanese brands. In this way, they try to prove the latter wrong. Both extreme opinions can only be taken with a pinch of salt. The Fiat Bravo is a specific model, because although compact and produced since 2007, it does not make as good an impression as, for example, a typical Golf. The interior materials are at the level of the B segment. The equipment of the poorer versions is exceptionally poor. It also lacks powerful versions, which always somehow raise the status of the model. Nevertheless, it is a fully fledged compact base. It has, for example, a 400-liter boot, which is a considerable asset of the model, and there is no less space in the back than in an Astra or Golf of the same year. The range of engines is quite modest, and these are usually weaker units. The most powerful develops 165 HP and is a 2-liter multi-jet diesel. This is a very good, durable design, which, assuming that we consciously decide on diesel, beats most German and Japanese diesel units from the same period. The same can be said about the 1.6 multi-jet engine, a smaller version of the iconic 1.9 JTD. The difference is that the 1.9 unit was used only in the first 2 years of production, and then withdrawn due to exhaust emissions. The Bravo 1.9 JTD is objectively the best diesel version because it is the simplest and most durable, but in practice, these are usually cars with high mileage. The petrol range is similar, 3 versions of the 1.4 engine in 4 power versions. The naturally aspirated unit is a sure thing. Its simple and reliable design allows you to forget about many problems. Users report excessive oil consumption, which can be considered a normal phenomenon in this engine, and not wear or failure. So negative opinions on this subject are a bit exaggerated and usually result from experience with Japanese cars. Either way, the 1.4 16 volts engine can be recommended to anyone who has patience. Its 95 HP works like 80 hydrogen phosphide, regardless of the revs or how hard you press the gas. The advantage is reasonable fuel consumption, on average at the level of 7-7.5 last 100 kilometers. On the market, you can find versions 1.4 with factory installation by Landi Renzo. Of course, it reduces operating costs, but you have to remember that after a large mileage, the engine may be more strained. For drivers who value good dynamics, I recommend the 1.4 T-Jet engine, a supercharged version of the same unit. It also has a tendency to use oil, but you have to be vigilant. Those who don't watch out for this may incur the costs of regenerating the turbocharger. The difference between the 120, 140, and 150 HP versions is, contrary to appearances, quite large. Namely, the middle version with 140 HP is equipped with the multi-air system, the module of which may be damaged. Therefore, a slightly safer choice is a weaker or more powerful version. Supercharged engines burn on average about 800 kilometers. There are major reservations about the M32 manual gearbox, used in some engine versions, including the 120 and 150 horsepower petrol. This is also a certain bargaining chip for the multi-air version, which has a different gearbox. The question remains, is it potentially better to repair the gearbox or the multi-air module? In my opinion, the latter is better. But if someone took care of the gearbox, oil change, then there should be no big risk. The gearbox is slightly worse with diesel engines. I do not recommend choosing the rare models with dual-logic transmission, i.e. automated manual. It can be used like a sequential gearbox, manually or automatically. But neither mode works pleasantly. If you really want such a transmission, then know that a delay in changing gear is normal here, and not a sign of a failure. The electric power steering with city mode may raise concerns. Although many cars had this solution at that time, it just so happened that Fiat became famous for it. This system is free from defects and durables, and if it fails, it is usually the steering angle sensor, not the gearbox or the motor. Despite this, I advise against using city mode too often, as it additionally loads the engine. The Fiat Bravo's suspension may not be as durable as its German or Japanese competitors, but it is cheap to repair. It has a simple torsion beam at the rear. Elements, such as links, bushings, shock absorbers, and springs are inexpensive. Engine parts are also cheap and readily available. Concerns about electrical faults, as befits this brand, are completely justified. It is not uncommon for the radio or lighting to break down, for one of the locks not to work, or for an error to appear on the dashboard. As a rule, these are harmless things, but they make life unpleasant. On the other hand, Fiat should be praised for the design of the car, in which it is impossible to find a serious flaw. Common Fiat Bravo faults. Minor electrical faults. 1.9 JTD intake manifold flap failures. High oil consumption of 1.4 engines. Multi-air module failures. Difficult operation of the gearshift mechanism. Worn bearings in the M32 gearbox. What to look for? A car with low mileage. There are plenty of those out there. What to avoid? A car with a lot of faults. It shows neglect. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.